And I may do that for Greenland, too. I may put a tariff on countries if they don't go along with Greenland, because we need Greenland for national security. So I may do that.
I mean, I think it was very clear from the President's post on social media yesterday that the objective here is to avoid an escalation, find a solution that works, and ultimately to avoid the imposition of these tariffs, which serve no good and will ultimately only hit consumers, in particular American consumers. So we're looking to avoid that outcome. A meeting of EU ambassadors took place yesterday. Contact is ongoing at the highest levels, of course, to understand the parameters of this problem, to put together a coordinated EU response. And I think that's the key point here. If I was to summarise what the Commission wants to achieve here, we want to make sure that the maximum amount of EU unity and solidarity is maintained so that we are in the strongest possible position to achieve the outcomes I have mentioned.
Europe faces a fresh transatlantic test after Donald Trump threatened tariffs over opposition to U.S. pressure on Greenland. EU leaders are now debating a powerful and untested trade weapon to counter what they see as economic coercion.
Hello, Olof. My question is obviously on the latest developments about Greenland. Donald Trump has threatened to impose a 10% tariff on 8 European countries to force a sale of Greenland. Given the extreme severity of the situation, is the European Commission now ready to start proceedings under the Anti-Coercion instrument? Are you willing to mobilize every economic lever at your disposal to defend the integrity of Denmark? And if that's the case, when are you going to start hitting back? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Jorge. In response, I can say the following. First, let me recall the President's statement where she said, "We stand firm in our commitment to uphold the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark. We will always protect our strategic, economic and security interests. We will face these challenges to our European solidarity with steadiness and resolve," end quote. Now let me emphasise that intensive consultations are ongoing among EU leaders. President Costa has indicated the likelihood of an extraordinary European Council this week to tackle this very subject. It's clear from the consultations among EU leaders, including President von der Leyen, that the priority here is to engage, not escalate, and avoid the imposition of tariffs. Why? Because this will ultimately harm consumers and businesses on both sides of the Atlantic. The EU has consistently underlined its shared transatlantic interest in peace and security in the Arctic, including through NATO. In response to your questions, Jorge, should the threatened tariffs be imposed, the European Union has tools at its disposal and is prepared to respond, because we will do everything necessary to protect EU economic interests. I mean, I think it was very clear from the President's post on social media yesterday that the objective here is to avoid an escalation, find a solution that works, and ultimately to avoid the imposition of these tariffs, which serve no good and will ultimately only hit consumers, in particular American consumers. So we're looking to avoid that outcome. A meeting of EU ambassadors took place yesterday. Contact is ongoing at the highest levels, of course, to understand the parameters of this problem, to put together a coordinated EU response. And I think that's the key point here. If I was to summarise what the Commission wants to achieve here, we want to make sure that the maximum amount of EU unity and solidarity is maintained so that we are in the strongest possible position to achieve the outcomes I have mentioned.
At the center of the dispute is Trump's plan to impose new tariffs on 8 NATO European countries.
So I started with President Macron of France, and a very nice person. I like him a lot. I hope he's listening, because he doesn't believe that, but I do. He's a nice man. And I said, Emmanuel, yes, Donald, thank you so much for calling. Oh, I said, you're not going to like this call. You're going to have to get your drug prices up. No, 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 I will not do that. I said, Emmanuel, we're paying 13 times more than, 13 times, not 13%, 13 times more than you are for this pill. I rattled off some numbers that are crazy. You know the numbers I'm talking about, Oz. Oz would give me some numbers. I'd say, this is crazy. We're paying 10 times, 12 times, 13 times. No, 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 I will not do that. I said, look, you've got to do it. 100% you're going to do it. No, no, Donald, I told you I will not do that. I said, here's the story, Emmanuel. If you don't do it, I'm going to put a 25% tariff on all goods, wine, champagnes, and everything else coming into the United States of America. He said, Donald, I would love to do this for you. It would be a great honor to do it. And that's where it began. And I went through country after country. Susie was responsible for getting every one of those leaders on the thing. Susie, by the way, stand up, Susie. She is doing such a good job. She's the first female chief of staff, and she might be the best chief of staff too, but she's doing a great job. Thank you, Susie. So Susie got him on, and I just went one after another. I called Germany. No, 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 we will not do that. I said, no, we're going to put a 25% tariff, which is, by the way, about 7 times more than they would have to pay by raising their drug, like 7 times. This wasn't like a little bit more, 7 times more. And I may do that for Greenland, too. I may put a tariff on countries if they don't go along with Greenland, because we need Greenland for national security. So I may do that. I'll give you a little, I'll take you out of that. In fact, that'll end up being the story. But actually, this is a much bigger story because we're reducing healthcare by numbers that you haven't seen.
The proposed duties would start at 10% on February 1st and rise to 25% by June. Trump says the tariffs will remain unless Europe agrees to U.S. demands linked to Greenland's future. The countries targeted include Denmark, Germany, France, the UK, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and the Netherlands. European leaders say the move weaponizes trade to force political concessions from allies. An emergency meeting of EU ambassadors in Brussels on January 18th ended after about 3 hours. Meanwhile, France is pushing hardest for deploying the EU's so-called trade bazooka. EU officials describe it as a nuclear option reserved for extreme pressure. Some member states want to hold off and pursue diplomacy with Washington first, while others argue that Trump's tariff threat is exactly what the ACI was designed to stop. Alongside the ACI, the EU is also weighing revived retaliatory tariffs. That package could hit up to 93 billion euros worth of US goods. The measures include duties of up to 30% on cars, poultry, and machinery. Those tariffs were prepared last year but suspended after an EU-US trade deal. That agreement set baseline tariffs and eased pressure on both sides.
Not directly on this topic, but related. The 93 billion retaliation package that the EU froze last year, how quickly can this be unfrozen in the event you would decide to do so? Thank you.
Thanks for your follow-up question, Kuhn. So I can just give the background here to remind colleagues. So on the 24th of July, the Commission adopted a consolidated package of EU rebalancing measures on a list of US goods imports worth 93 billion euro to prepare for a situation where such a series of rebalancing measures would be necessary. This is a broad list, a broad range of industrial and agricultural products. The current suspension of those rebalancing measures lapses on the 6th of February. So the lapse of the suspension is automatic. So therefore, unless the Commission, in consultation with Member States via the usual comitology procedure, takes steps to extend the suspension ends and the measures kick in on the 7th of February. So I hope that's clear procedurally, and just to be very, very clear, and also to cut off follow-on questions, no decision has been made on that yet. Leaders are consulting this week on multiple levels, including at the extraordinary UCO we're expecting, and we will take it from there.
The current standoff stems from U.S. demands tied to Greenland's strategic value. Trump insists Greenland is vital to U.S. national security in the Arctic.